Meta's new Threads platform is now the fastest growing app in history after adding those 100 million users in under a week. But can the new Twitter rival hold people's attention, or is it just a fad? In the company's earnings call last night, CEO Mark Zuckerberg seemed just as surprised by the app's success as everyone else, but tried to show confidence in his ability to grow the platform. Here's what he had to say.
We feel like we're getting to a good place on that with Threads. There's still a lot of basic functionality to build. Once we feel like we're in a very good place on that, then I'm highly confident that we're going to be able to pour enough gasoline on this to help it grow. Once we get to the point where we feel good that everyone who's using it is going to continue using it at a high rate.
So can Zuckerberg throw enough gasoline on that Threads fire? Joining us now is Lightman, Carnegie Mellon University Heinz College Professor and Digital Media and Marketing, and Andrew Boon, JMP Securities Managing Director and Equity Research Analyst. A big thank you to you both here. So Andrew, from an investor perspective here, what does Meta need to do with Threads to really differentiate it from what's already out there in terms of platforms like Twitter or some of these other platforms?
I think what they need to do is build up the social connections that are available on other platforms that Meta already offers. And so I think that is making the recommendations in terms of content, bringing more users on, especially kind of those one-to-many experts that I think Twitter is today known for. And then once they get those users that are very prolific in terms of producing content, then I think it's about just making more users aware of it. And they already have the user base that they're porting in from Instagram, from core Facebook to be able to do that.
And I know a lot of people, at least with some of these initial sign-ups, it's about curiosity. I mean, I signed up just to see what all the fuss was about, see how I could use it. But we actually spoke to some social media users on the streets of New York about Threads. Here's what they had to say. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
It's too similar to Twitter, and I have Twitter and I don't use it anyway. I'm just kind of tired of Instagram kind of copying a lot of the things that other apps have been doing.
It's fake Twitter. Like, nobody want to be on Threads if you got the Twitter going, feel me?
I set up an account. I don't ever go on it.
I didn't feel the need to download it because it didn't feel new.
I can definitely see Threads becoming a competitor with Twitter.
So, Ari, you have a lot of people saying they either don't like Threads, it's too close to Twitter. Ari, do you see that tide turning for Meta then, or have they essentially cannibalized enough of their audience at this point?
Potentially. It depends on how they execute associated with features and functionality that people are used to within some of the larger microblogging platforms like Twitter. But it also, they have to differentiate themselves from a variety of other platforms that are just launched themselves recently in the past year or two, including Blue Sky, Mastodon, Post, Spill, those sorts of things. So there's a lot of fragmentation in the market, and they really have to execute very, very well. They can't rely on sort of their current user base. They need to differentiate and leverage what they have in stock, which is really sort of a tie-in to some of the other major platforms that they utilize, including WhatsApp and Instagram and Facebook, of course.
And Andrew, how do you see Threads needing to evolve from this point forward? It does seem to be in the sort of figuring it out. It's your MVP, your minimum viable product here. And as Mark Zuckerberg was saying, there still a lot of functionality they still need to be in. What do you see investors really honing in on to really before they get excited about where it could go from here beyond its potential?
Well, I think it's important to contextualize that point, right? It really is an MVP at this point in terms of they started this 5 months per press reports before it kind of came out. So, we're half a year old at this point. In terms of other social platforms that have really gained traction, it's historically been a new format, right? Like TikTok was recommendation of short form video. Instagram was really a photo first kind of experience. Core Facebook was the feed. Snapchat was the ephemeral nature of that. And so we'll see how they innovate and we'll see how Threads develops, but it may require something that's newer in terms of really jettisoning users from Twitter onto Threads.
And Andrew, how do you see this progressing? Because we know with Twitter, one of their problems was monetization. We know advertisers were sort of honing in on that space. What then happens with Threads? How will they do differently? Or what can they perhaps learn from how Twitter has interacted with its advertisers?
There's certainly a core asset that Meta just brings to the table in terms of 12 million advertisers that are already on the platform. And so let's just talk about Reels really quickly. So what was the new information that came out last night? 75% of advertisers are on Reels today. And that's just so impressive in terms of this being about a year-old product, and you have, 3/4 of adoption of the overall advertiser base. Extend that to Threads, and you start to get something that's exciting, where you have density in terms of an ad auction, where you have the data that's available across the rest of the platform. I think the monetization side is pretty clear. Really, the question is around engagement and building that scale.
And Ari, regarding engagement here, I mean, as we look at, this push for these everything apps, as we saw with Twitter, now X, trying to encompass everything, and we are seeing Meta now also taking on some of that as well. What happens here in terms of the potential for antitrust issues as they do really try and become these everything apps to people?
So part of the large issue is this idea of surveillance capitalism associated with, if you go on an app, you sign agreements, I collect a variety of data on you in terms of your utilization, your interests, your connections, and basically monetize that for advertisers in terms of hyper-targeted advertising. So that's sort of the norm. Unfortunately, with companies like Meta, that accounts for 95% of the revenue base. So this push towards an everything app is really looking at things like WeChat, which diversifies a revenue base associated with payments, associated with interactions, a variety of different utility that you could do within an app. We're trying to get there, and social platforms are having a really hard time because of the partnerships and sort of the ability to integrate and create greater levels of utility across the board. It's really challenging to do, but to Andrew's point, I think with advertisers, really providing them less volatility, as well as providing them unique analytics associated with trending and analysis would be very beneficial associated with keeping that revenue base going, which is vital.
And Andrew, do you have any concerns, I guess, from an antitrust perspective about what you're keeping an eye on as an investor as potential headwinds to Threads growth and how it really fits in with the broader ecosystem of Meta?
You never know what you don't know, right? In terms of antitrust and who's going to come at the various kind of tech mega caps and what's available. You feel much better about the EU-US agreement in terms of data transfers. I think that was a risk that everyone was aware of in terms of kind of the potential over the next 12 months. So that's now been solved. In terms of antitrust more broadly, we'll see. I don't think there's anything that's imminent, but you just don't know.
Indeed. Well, a big thank you there to our panel. Ari Lightman, Carnegie Mellon University Heinz College Professor, Digital Media and Marketing, and Andrew Boon, JMP Securities Managing Director and Equity Research Analyst. A big thank you to you both this morning.